Hey everyone, welcome back to the AZ-104 exam preparation series. So in this episode, as I promised in the very last episode, that we are going to take a lot of questions on Azure Storage and the related concepts. And as always, our exam approach is very simple. Take some exam-like questions, understand the concept, go through the Microsoft documentation to validate the answer, and also I will help you understand the questions and give you analogies, use cases and more examples so that you can deep dive into each Azure concept. So what are we waiting for? Let's head on to the very first question for today. So I hope you're ready to deep dive into the world of Microsoft Azure Storage. So the questions are really tricky today. Please pay very close attention, listen to all the explanations, examples, documentation that I give to understand the questions and the answers. So let's get started with the first question for today, question number 221, part 39. The question is saying that you have an Azure subscription and you want to create an Azure storage account as shown in the following exhibit. So this is the exhibit. It says that you have a drop-down menu, so two drop-down menus that we have to select the answer choice that completes each statement based on the information presented in the graphics. So let's see a little bit more on this exhibit. So here you can see that we have this storage account, subscription 1, and the resource group name is RG1. And friends, one thing I really want to tell you that all these questions are referral questions. These are sample questions. These are not related to the real exam questions. Maybe the real exam questions are different. These questions are specifically crafted for you to understand various Azure concepts, various Azure services, various Azure resources. So idea of these kind of videos is to take few questions, sample questions. So we are trying to understand Azure concept in a question and answer manner. So that is the real idea of these videos. And here you can also note down the location, which is not Europe. Other details you can also note down. So in these kind of questions, my friends, it's super important for you to read the question very carefully. There will be loads of noise in the question. You have to filter out the noise and the additional information that is just there to distract you, or let's say that Microsoft really want to judge your capabilities. So here, let's jump on to the boxes given here, or the tables or the drop downs. So the first one is asking you the minimum number of copies of storage account will be 1, 2, 3 or 4. So what according to you is the minimum number of copies that will be created? And please note that this is a locally redundant storage that you can see here. So here you can see replication, that is locally redundant storage. So these are the pointers, my friends. You have to learn where the correct information is given related to the questions being asked. So the correct answer for this part of the question is 3. So there will be always 3 copies when you're using the locally redundant storage. And just to give you more idea, locally redundant storage, my friends, provides really durable, highly available storage within a single location, that is the sub-region. So please try to relate these concepts. Locally redundant, that means it is available in a single location. And in this kind of storage, the locally redundant storage, there is always 3 equivalent copies of data that is maintained for you. And these 3 copies are very important. Why? Because this will ensure that you can recover your data from the common failures, for example, disk failure, node failure or rack failure, without impacting your storage account availability and durability. And in just a while, I will give you more documentation so that you can understand locally redundant storage and also the other type of storage. But before that, let's handle this part of the question as well. It says to reduce the cost of infrequently accessed in the storage account, you must modify which of the setting. So should you modify access tier or performance or account kind or replication? And the correct answer for this one is access tier. And why this is so? Because here in the question it is mentioned that you want to reduce the cost of infrequently accessed data. So I think I'm missing a word here. It should be data in the storage account. So here you can see on left hand side in this exhibit, here you can see it says access tier is hot. Now the question is saying that you have to reduce the cost of infrequently accessed data. What is the option? You have to change the access tier from hot to cool, so that you can reduce the cost. And the very first documentation I want you to read is this one, Azure Storage Redundancy. And here you can understand all about different kind of redundancy option. So for example, we just talked about the locally redundant storage. You can also understand about the zone redundant storage, and similarly there are other kinds also given in this documentation. And once you have understood about the redundancy options, then you can jump on to this documentation that says access tiers of blob storage or blob data. So here you have to jump on to this section. You can understand all about hot tier, cold tier, archive tier. What are the number of days that you want to store the data inside these kind of access tiers to optimally use the cost. And friends, it's quite logical to understand that as the access tier move from hot to cold to archive, the cost of the storage is decreasing. However, you have to understand when the storage tiers are moving from hot to archive, then that data should always be infrequently or rarely accessed.
And yes, my friends, in the very next episode, I'm going to take some questions that will really mimic the real exam. So a mixed bag of questions that will really twist your mind as it actually happens in the real exams as well. So do not miss to watch the next episode. Subscribe to the channel for the timely notifications.
Now let's jump on to the next question. Question number 222. It says that you have an existing Azure subscription that has the following Azure storage account. So here you can see that we have this table given here. We have accounts 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the kind is also given. We have general purpose V2, V2, V1, and the last one is blob storage. Please mind, we are also given with the performance, standard and premium. You can read that. Then we are also given the replication. I just mentioned there are different kind of replication. So once again, we are encountering that. So we have locally redundant storage. We have read access geo-redundant storage, and locally redundant storage respectively. And finally, we are given with the access tier, so which is cool, hot, none, or hot. So that is what, my friends, when the questions will be revolving around the storage account, few concepts you must be knowing. For example, what kind of storage account it is, what is the performance, replication, and access tier. So very, I would say, linked concept, linked subtopics that you must know to answer these kind of questions. And further, the question is saying there is a requirement to identify the storage accounts that can be converted to zone redundant storage replication. This must be done only through a live migration from Azure support. Which of the following account can you convert to ZRS or zone redundant storage? Your options are account 1, option 2, account 2, option C, account 3, and option D, account 4. So try to read the question once again, try to understand and digest all this information that is given. I will also give you the correct logic, and the correct answer is account 1. So let me explain this little bit more. As I explained in the previous question as well, that the Azure storage always stores multiple copies of your data that is protected from the planned or unplanned events. Now, it's very important to understand that the redundancy, it ensures that your storage account meets its availability and durability targets even in the case of failures. So when you're deciding which redundancy option is the best one for you, so here you can see that we have different redundancy options. Then you also have to consider that there is always a trade-off between the lower cost and high availability. Now, as I showed you in the last question as well, you can go through all these documentation to understand what are the different redundancy options. For example, we have locally redundant storage. So locally redundant storage, it copies your data synchronously 3 times within the single physical location in the primary region. So of course, this is the least expensive option. Second one, we have zone redundant storage that really copies your data synchronously once again across 3 Azure availability zones in the primary region. Now let me quickly explain what is this geo-redundant storage. So this one, listen to this very carefully. It copies your data synchronously 3 times within the single physical location in the primary region using LRS, which is locally redundant storage. And once it is done with that, it copies your data asynchronously. So please, synchronously and asynchronously now to a single physical location in the secondary region that is hundreds of miles away from your primary region. So that is the big difference between the locally redundant storage and geo-redundant storage. So friends, I really hope that you understood what are the different replication option or the redundancy option. Please read the documentation. But that is just one part of the question. The other tricky part is this one given here, which says this must be done only through a live migration. So you need to understand this concept as well. Now, to request a live migration to ZRS or GZRS or RAGZRS, you need to migrate your storage account from the LRS to the ZRS in the primary region with no application downtime. And to migrate from LRS to GZRS or RAGZRS, first you have to switch to the GRS or RAGRS, and then you have to request a live migration. And similarly, you can also request a live migration from GRS or RAGRS to GZRS or RAGZRS. And to do that, to migrate from GRS or RAGRS to the ZRS, you first have to switch to the LRS and then request a live migration. And also understand that the live migration is supported only for the storage account that use LRS or GRS. And to further understand this concept better, you can read this documentation, Change How a Storage Account is Replicated. So all and everything that I just explained or tried to explain in simple words or lesser words is given in quite some detail in this documentation. But for now, let's jump on to the next question. Question number 223 that says that you have an Azure subscription that contains a storage account named Account 1. Now you plan to upload the disk file of a virtual machine to Account 1 from your on-premises network. The on-premises network uses the public IP address space of 131.107.1.0/24. Now you need to plan to use the disk file to provision an Azure virtual machine named VM1, and this VM1 will be attached to a virtual network named VNet1. Now this VNet1 or the virtual network uses the IP address space of 192.168.0.0/24. So there are few requirements here. You need to configure the account to meet the following requirements. The first one is that you need to ensure that you can upload the disk file to Account 1. Second one, you need to ensure that you can attach the disk to the virtual machine 1. Third one, you need to prevent all other accesses to the Account 1. Which two actions should you perform? And your options are option A, from the firewalls and virtual network blade of Account 1, select selected networks. Option B, from the firewalls and virtual network blades of Account 1, select allow trusted Microsoft services to access this storage account. Then thirdly, from the firewalls and virtual network blade of Account 1, add 131.107.1.0/24 IP address range. And fourth one or option D is from the firewall and virtual machine blade of Account 1, add VNet1, which is the virtual network 1. And lastly, from the service points blade of virtual network 1, add a service point. So let's check out what are the two correct actions that you need to perform. The first one is option A, from the firewalls and virtual network blade of Account 1, you have to select the selected network. And then the second correct action is option C, from the firewalls and virtual network blade of Account 1, add this IP address range. And a good documentation to understand this concept is this one, configure Azure Storage firewalls and virtual networks. Now let's move on to a very interesting question. Question number 224 that says that you have an Azure subscription that contains the storage account as shown in the following exhibit. And you have two drop-down menus to select the answer choices that completes each statement based on the information provided in the graphic. So this is the graphic that we have. And here, what are the things that we need to understand? First of all, we have some of the account names given. And then we have what are the different kind of storage accounts. So we have storage V2, storage, blob storage, file storage. So different kind of storage account. Resource group is also given and along with the location. So let's check out what are the drop-down menus options given. So in this one here, you have to complete this statement which says that you can create a premium file share in, your options are Contoso 101 only, Contoso 104 only, Contoso 101 and 104 only. Then we have the fourth option, Contoso 101, 102 or 104. And lastly, all the options that are given here. And the correct answer for this question is Contoso 104 only. Now let's check out the second drop-down menu that you can use the archive access tier in Contoso 101 or Contoso 101, 103. And then third option 101, 102 or 103. Fourth option 101, 102 and 104, and lastly all of the above option. So what is the correct answer here? Well, the correct answer is option B, which is Contoso 101 and 103 only. So it's a rather confusing question, right? No, let me explain this for you. So here in the first option, we chose this Contoso 104. Why this is so? Because the premium file shares that was given in the question as well. So these file shares are hosted in a special purpose storage account, which is called file storage account. And which one is the file storage account here? It is Contoso 104 only. So this is what you can see as a last option. So that is why Contoso 104 is the correct option for this question or this statement. Now coming to this one here, why we pick 101 and 103. So you need to understand that the object storage data tiering between hot, cool and archive tier is actually supported in the Blob storage and also in the general purpose version 2 accounts. So the general purpose version 1, which is the older one, is kind of not supported nowadays. So that is why we have to choose option 101 and 103 only. And if you really want to deep dive and understand how to create the SMP Azure file share, and also to understand what are the performance requirements for your Azure file share, and also what are your redundancy requirements for your Azure file share, this is the documentation. Links are given in the description box. And with that, let's jump on to the next question. Question number 225 that says that you have an Azure subscription named TTBB1, which is the Tech Blackboard one, that contains the resources shown in the following table, and you create a new storage subscription named TTBB2. So you need to identify which which resources can be moved to TTBB1. So we are moving resources from one subscription to another one. Very important, please remember, we are moving from subscription to subscription. Which resources should you identify? So here we can see different type of resources are given. We have storage, we have virtual network, virtual machine, we also have a managed virtual machine, and then we also have a recovery services vault for recovery of virtual machine. Now let's check out what are the options given. Option A is virtual machine 1, storage 1, VNet 1 and VM 1 managed only. So are these the resources that you can move from one subscription to another one? Or do you want to go with the option B, VM 1 or VM 1 managed only? Option C says VM 1, storage 1, VNet 1, VM 1 managed and R vault. So basically all the resources given here. Then we have option D, which says only the R vault 1. Correct answer is option C, VM 1, storage 1, VNet 1, VM 1 managed, which is the managed disk of virtual machine 1, then R vault 1. So basically what we are saying is that all the resources can be moved from one subscription to another one. And I have multiple documentation for you to understand this concept, but there is one documentation that I really want to read and call out. Just give me a second. So first of all, read this documentation that says move operation support for resources. And here you will get a good idea how to move the resources, what are the prerequisite or what are the do's and don'ts while you move the resources, which can be moved, which cannot be moved. So everything is given in this documentation. Really good documentation, lengthy, and of course we have to keep the video in a time limit. So that is why I cannot read all the documentation, but of course provide you with all the links. Then you can read also this documentation. And friends, why I'm saying you to read all the documentation? Because there are a lot of intricacies or details hidden in all these documentation that will really fumble you or try to confuse you in the question. So for example, you read this option or resource given here. We have R vault 1. So now the question is saying that we are moving from subscription 1 to subscription 2, and that is possible. However, if the question was saying that you have to move all the resources from one region to another one, then in that case, my friends, R vault 1 would not be a possible option. Why? Let me show you. So here on this documentation, you can see that the vaults are not allowed when you're moving the resources to different regions. So here you can read that moving recovery vault services. So here you can read moving recovery service vaults for Azure backup across Azure regions is not supported. So this is how, my friends, there will be a lot of mix of options given in the questions that will really test your abilities, and that will really test your knowledge and validate if you have ever worked on Azure or not. And that's the reason, my friends, I always give you loads of documentation to read, to validate the answer, to understand the concept. Super important when you are appearing for these kind of exams.
So I hope, my friends, you like the questions from today's episodes. In case you have some suggestions or some feedback, good or bad, both are welcome. Please put your comments in the comment section below, and do watch the previous and the next episodes of this series, and do not miss to watch our other exam series both on Microsoft Azure and Amazon AWS. And not just that, we have loads of videos on free exam vouchers, free exam certifications, and also generative AI. And that's all for today. I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.